The NHO Show.
You got that pressure.
And we're back.
Good morning, world.
Good morning, world. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you listen to this. So we're recording it in the morning, but it could be the evening by the time you listen to this. So hope you're having a wonderful day. Colin is feeling better.
I am feeling better. Yeah, we took a week off last week. I had some flu-like symptoms. It was day to day, but we're back at it.
We are. Doesn't mean we aren't talking to each other every single day. Colin can attest that I probably send him how many text messages?
We correspond well.
We do correspond well, and there'll be literal 3 a.m. podcast idea, cryptic note, insert here, and that's kind of part of it.
You never know when inspiration will strike.
No.
Especially if you're watching a West Coast game, which the Leafs have been playing a lot of this week.
This is true. You know what I've really been enjoying for the first time in my life? Typically I'd watch, Saturday night, it's hockey night in Canada. I sit down, after, especially because I haven't really been doing anything on Saturday night. So I've been sitting down watching, hockey night in Canada, watching the Saturday night game, and watching that primetime, that 7 o'clock game. But then I've been sticking around for the late game, which is something by 10 o'clock I'd be like, okay, I'm done, I'm going out, or I'm going to bed, or whatever.
Right.
But I'm in West Coast teams, you watch them, but it's we all...
It's like what?
No, it's not, no, you watch them, but I don't...
East Coast bias, perhaps?
Yes, 100%. Total East Coast bias. And when you're, if you're going to go and sit down and watch a hockey game, you're going to pick teams that, might influence the team that you're most interested in.
That's fair.
And maybe your bandwidth for hockey might only be 3 hours. Or, it's Saturday night, I want to go out. But I've been sticking around for this Saturday night game, and it actually is making me super happy. I just feel better watching that late game.
Well, I think it's good. It's good that you're doing that. You're probably learning some things. You're probably seeing players you don't see too often.
This is true. I'm expanding my roster of actual game watching.
Yeah.
And my player watching. Whereas, you pick it up the next day, you watch highlights, you follow Twitter, you know what's going on in the games, but you don't necessarily...
But you don't see it, yeah.
You don't see it, and, that's really when you actually learn and make ideas, and then insert 3 a.m. text messages here.
And you can't really beat the broadcast of Hockey Night in Canada.
You can't.
Still, probably one of my favorite nights of the week. I, on the other hand, I've been a fan of a West Coast team pretty much my whole life, and I'm a bit of a night owl, so seeing West Coast games is nothing new to me. So
this is true.
I'm I take pride in that to my East Coast friends.
Yes. Well, good thing that you've got the East Coast versus the West Coast.
Yeah.
East Coast is the better coast.
People can't
The
see
Beast
me
Coast?
right now, but
The Beast Coast?
The Beast Coast, okay.
Anyway,
That's enough of that.
Enough. Okay, continue.
I was going to say I'm wearing a throwback Hartford Whalers sweater today.
This is true.
Although people can't see me.
We'll take a picture and post
we
it.
will.
You'll
probably
love it.
Probably the best logo, one of the best logos of all time for sure.
Yeah.
We both agree on that for a while.
Definitely.
So.
The Hartford Whalers and the Quebec Nordiques are my two favorite jerseys of all time.
And it's a good choice. I'm proud of you for that decision.
Thank you. You're one thing. He's proud of me. Yes. Well, let's talk hockey because this is a hockey podcast after all, and we could talk logos all day.
And we're about almost a fifth of the season in.
Yep.
Teams are getting near that 15-game mark.
Yep, we passed that 10-game mark, which is all too important for rookies, and now we're into the 15-game mark, which is all too important for coaches.
Yeah, and just changes in general. I think teams are seeing. I actually had changes written down. It's funny that you.
Yeah.
Because the clocks are changing, the seasons are changing.
That's true.
And it's just that time of year for hockey changes as well. So whether that is, teams are getting a sense of where they stand. Some teams are off to really good starts. Some teams are off to terrible starts and think they'd be where they are. So those teams in bigger markets, like the New York Rangers, like the Montreal Canadiens, even the Edmonton Oilers, although they won last night, there's going to be some changes that are going to filter through. And we've spoken about whether that's trades, whether that's firing of personnel, but there's a few coaches and GMs that are on the hot seat.
Yeah, definitely a couple of coaches that we need to highlight. I think Bergevin from Montreal, GM. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was thinking.
Sorry.
I was like halfway through my.
I was thinking, like,
Either
do
way.
you fire Claude Julien? I don't think you can, because he's a new hire by the GM. So that's one of those situations where the coach isn't the problem at that point.
True.
If you fired the GM most likely brings in another coach. But I mean, it's Claude Julien. You'd probably give him a little more rope if you're a new GM.
Yeah, and for Montreal, there's always the French factor, right?
Exactly.
So, at the end of the day, when
Which
you're
is a topic
looking
for
at
another day, I think. But.
Yeah, when you're, I mean, the thing is that when you're looking at your coach and your GM for every other team, you're looking at, it doesn't matter. They speak English, great, that's ideal. So they speak French, great, cool. But in Montreal, they need to speak French. And as of late, they have only been giving interviews and press conferences in French.
Really?
Quite literally, they are only giving them in French right now.
Well, I think that's a good way to keep the media off your back a little bit. You only have to deal with one version.
You just have to deal with French media, and you're like, I can say whatever I want to say.
Unless you get one of those Google Translate things in your ear, and then you can
A little
badger
Google
them.
Docs.
Yeah. Questions.
But this is kind of the interesting thing right now in Montreal. Is
Yeah,
that they're only giving interviews in French.
Montreal is definitely. I think the whole hockey world is just waiting for something to happen around them, because when Carey Price is now day to day with an injury as well, they just lost him. So if the season keeps going the way it is, you could see a guy like Max Pacioretty traded. I think before Bergevin gets fired, and I think he will if this continues, he's gonna make a trade to kind of try to save his job.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of foresee, and it could be. I think it's gonna have to be a big one. So keep an eye on that. But there's some new coaches that are also on the hot seat.
I just want to throw it back to a podcast we did, a discussion we had last year. I don't even remember. Maybe it was around this time. But we talked about coaches and GMs and how it's the only job that you get, or one of the only jobs that you get, knowing that you're probably going to get fired at some point.
With coaches, it's almost within 3 years.
Yeah.
At most.
That you're never actually going... I think it was right around the,
when
Gerard
Gallant,
Gallant kind of weird...
I recall this.
Taxi to the airport situation. Bags not being thrown out to the side or whatever it was. It's an interesting job, because you take the job knowing that you're probably going to get fired.
Your days are numbered,
within the next few years. Coaches, especially GMs, there are GMs who have been with organizations for a really long
GMs
time.
are a little more secure, but at the same time, it's all about your track record too.
This is true.
You have more patience, because usually when you come in as a new GM, you strip it all down. You get draft picks, so you have to wait to see how those draft picks do before you can be like, you suck, get out. So, it's an interesting kind of catch-22. No, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just an interesting. Anyway,
it's just an
an interesting approach to a job. It's kind of like politics, right? You approach it, or being the prime minister or the president. You have to approach your position knowing that you've got X amount of years to do something really great, and in X amount of years, you're going to have to go and do that something great somewhere else. And it's just so for a coach or a GM, how do you make the team as great as you possibly can in 3 years, say?
Right.
Your term is basically 3 years. And then you have to be successful in 3 years. And that's really, for some of these teams, that's not a lot of time.
No, it's not. And I think that's what makes coaching even more difficult, because there's definitely coaches that have certain styles, but you also have to coach to the team that you have. So if you're changing all the time, I mean, there's quote-unquote job security with coaching, because although you get fired, a lot of them get hired somewhere else. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's moving cities. You have to deal with the whole family situation. It's not an easy situation. But yeah, it just makes it so much harder, because from day one you're under the microscope, and you're with a new team, new players. You try to instill the things that make you successful, but you have to adapt. So it's interesting.
Interesting.
That
Anyway.
being said, like I said, there's new coaches that are kind of seeing that, and not a lot of I mean, Phil Housley in Buffalo didn't really have much coaching experience. These guys are former players. Him and Rick Tocchet are the two new coaches that are kind of feeling the heat right now. Tocchet was assistant coach in Pittsburgh, so he's got a little more experience. But I mean, if these are teams that just have a tradition of losing, which is why they have new coaches this year, and if something doesn't change, they could be gone relatively quick.
Yeah.
We'll see how much patience there is.
I'd like to see. I think everyone's rooting for Buffalo to kind of do something, and they've been trying a whole lot of things and not really getting anywhere at all.
And that's the thing. Buffalo, like Rick Tocchet, probably has a little more leeway, because I mean, Arizona made a lot of big changes this offseason, and we're looking like they wanted to compete, and they're out of the playoffs pretty much guaranteed now with their start. So I think he's got a little more leash, but if Buffalo's been trying to revamp that rebuild for, it seems, almost like 7 years now, and nothing's clicking.
This is true. So what do you think would be the key? Like, what would be kind of 3 things Buffalo could do to improve their team overall?
Well, I think they have to make a trade. I think they need to trade Sam Reinhart, because he's a piece that has a lot of potential still, and I like him as a player, but he just hasn't been either given the role. I think he looked good next to Jack Eichel last year, and I don't know why he hasn't really been stable to him this year, but he's a guy that will fetch you something good, and obviously I think they need help on the back end and in net. So if you can kind of shore up those, hopefully that pans out. But 3 things. There's one. Maybe define the leadership role a little better, because they're a team without a captain currently, which we'll talk about in a second, I believe.
Yes,
and
we should talk about that in a second.
3rd one, I don't know. Just draft better. At the end of the day,
better, guys.
well, at the end of the day, like, they've been hitting on the high end draft picks, but they don't have that depth coming in throughout the system like a lot of teams have, successful teams at least. So I don't watch too many Buffalo games, so I can't speak to them. But 2 guys I could see them move are Sam Reinhart and Evander Kane. Evander Kane's having a great start to the year, but he's also an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, and he could get you. Although he's got off ice issues, there could be he'd be a good ad for a contending team. So, just one more thing on the coaching though. I think we have the guy we haven't mentioned that probably will get fired is Alain Vigneault. He's the veteran. He's in New York. They need to make a change, and it's just it looks like he's lost the room. So. Yeah. Another team looking to make a trade, though, I think, before they axe anybody, but
do you think
he'd be my number one candidate.
Do you think that maybe it's time for, like, I will say that I love the Rangers. I actually had a dream about the Rangers last night, oddly enough.
Strange. Was Hank involved? Was it?
No.
What kind of dream was it?
I don't know. There was something I don't remember, but the Rangers were involved.
Because if Hank's involved, it could be a different kind of dream.
No, but actually, I wanted to talk about it. But it wasn't in my dream. But I wonder, like, is he? He's when he plays with Team Sweden, he's the king. Is he still the king in the NHL? When we come to NHL play, is he?
Honestly, it's too bad that we can't see him in the Olympics this year, because it would be interesting to see how he performed versus his NHL play so far. Because I'm still a big fan of Henrik, big believer, but his play is just not backing it up right now, and he is getting old. But he's never had the help. That's the thing. He's never like New York's got 2 reliable defensemen maybe. So
What about like? I wonder. I feel like there's this kind of sort of. I don't know. I don't really know how to put it. But just no.
What was this dream about? Can we...
No. It's not a dream. This is not part of the dream at all. Because I don't think this deep into while I'm dreaming necessarily. But it seems like maybe I wonder, and this is an analytics question for you.
Okay. I didn't
and
answer
another.
your last one, by the
No,
way.
you didn't. I'm still waiting for my answer.
Well, we'll touch on that after. Go on.
But what I'm wondering and what I'm trying and maybe what might be curious is Swedish players
Okay.
and their kind of age cap versus performance in the NHL. So Swedish players, like Team Sweden's amazing. Team
Yes.
Sweden is so fun to watch when they're all together. But when it goes to the NHL, because there are so many Swedish players in the NHL, do they have kind of an age cap where their performance no longer, where like they're super hot when they're young? You know, the Nylanders are super hot right now.
They're so hot right now.
They're so hot right now.
Nylander.
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 But like, and Lundqvist has been super hot for so long. But is there a point in their career, like after a certain number of years or at a certain age, where no matter what they do, performance is just going to drop compared to North American born players?
I was going to say, you think it's specifically a Swedish thing?
I don't know.
I don't know.
But I would take like the age.
Because, like, what about the Finns?
But
Probably not as many Finns in the NHL.
not as many Finns in the NHL.
But-
You can look at it in every kind of, nationality and stuff. But when the Swedes are together, they're on fire. When they play for Team Sweden, they're on fire and they're amazing. But when they go to the NHL and when they're sort of at some point their performance drops off and it drops off hard.
I don't think it's a specific nationality thing. I think what you see with European countries or players from European countries is that when they do start to decline, they usually just go back home and play. So like, there's Canadian and American guys that are in the NHL that like maybe it shouldn't be anymore. But they're playing in the league. I mean, they've got a good reputation, so they're there. But they're staying in the NHL or in the league because they're close to home. Whereas like if you're a guy from Sweden and you used to be in the top 6 and now you're like relegated to like a 4th line role, why not retire from the NHL, go home and play like for a year or two on a team near home in the top 6 and make more money and be close to all your family and friends.
No, totally. And
I don't
really
think
with North American players,
it's an
like
interesting
where else
question.
are you going to go play though?
It's an
But
interesting
I just feel like there is a little bit more of a decline, or like a.
Do you have an
quicker
example
decline.
that you're thinking of other than Hank's he's nearing 40, so that's
No, I know. It's like no, these are old
natural.
guys.
Like Sedins are still doing well.
Are they?
I mean, I've never been a big Sedin fan, so like they had their prime when
They did.
in their prime age, but now they're performing as expected, I'd say. But again, like they're only like they're gonna retire in Vancouver just because they love Vancouver and they're gonna live there for the rest of their life.
Right, and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, and maybe it is partially like guys just go home because they're like, you know what, I can get a better contract at home. I want to finish off my hockey playing career at home. I've spent 20 years in North America. I want to go back. But I guess that you just don't see the same kind of commitment and love, like, or just like their performance is up and up and up and up, and there's this huge, like, they're super good, and then they hit a certain age or a certain part in their career, and they just drop. Like, what is going on? Or it's just totally mental and totally, coincidence, and it actually doesn't mean anything. It could just be coincidence.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Anyways, to your previous question the last time about length of play and injuries and blah, blah, blah. I was going to look into it, and I started looking into it, but then I realized, like, this is a lot of data to go through for something that's kind of an obvious, like, yes, you know? I think that if I looked into it, it would take me a long time, and I think the conclusion that I would draw would be, like, yes, playing more hockey causes more injuries.
Right.
And having less rest.
Right.
So that's
Maybe.
my answer.
Okay. Well,
I just didn't see it as an effective use of time. That's all.
I do love efficiency.
That's all.
I do love.
But
efficiency.
I like where your head's at with wanting to explore.
I mean,
these
especially
questions.
with you, yeah, and I mean with you and your love of analytics, like let's actually analyze some trends and find trends, and then not that we're going to help shape the game or anything, and we're going to
That's
change
fair.
the game, but we should be, we are looking at the
I
new
would-
hockey order.
Yes, something I would look at is when, and this has kind of been explored as well, is when players do start to decline, and if there is a relationship between the type of players that do decline at a certain age. And maybe it's not nationality, maybe it's playing style. And I think a lot of Swedish players play more of a rough and tumble game than, say, like Russians, for example. They're more the checkers, like Nick Jarmelson, and they're like going back a little bit, but he's Finnish, but Yuri Lettinen,
Yep.
like Selke trophy winner. They play more of the checking roles, and I think that wears their body down a little more. So
Could be. And then we can talk about enforcers. And
Yeah.
how enforcers we will save for another day, because that's a bigger talk. I do want to go back to what we were talking about, or what we sort of started talking about a little bit before about, we were talking about coaches and GMs, and that's a leadership role that needs to be filled, and needs to be filled with the right person. There are a number of teams in the NHL right now who are still without captains. And we're getting to that point in the season where you may want to start thinking about either having a captain for the season or not, and operating on a system where you don't have a captain, which
Yeah.
is totally fine. If you shouldn't give a captain, you shouldn't give the C to somebody who completely doesn't deserve it, or to a team that really doesn't have an obvious leader. But there are some teams who don't have captains that I think are on the verge of being able to name a captain.
yeah, I can't really remember the last time that a captain was named like mid-season, unless a guy was like stripped of it. But I think that we both agree that some of these teams that don't have captains maybe should have named a captain going into the year. So like, and they're kind of seeing the results of the lack of direction or leadership now. And like we said, Buffalo, we touched on that. Do you have an idea of who should be captain in Buffalo?
Buffalo. I had a few. I think Ryan O'Reilly could be captain. I've seen him in a few different instances.
I think he's the obvious choice.
Yeah.
But I think it's also... See, because I know Ryan O'Reilly a little more intimately, you could say. Not that I've like ever talked to the guy, but I've just followed
No?
his career a little more.
You don't stalk him?
And I'm not sure, like, great player, love what he brings to the table. I was sad that Colorado traded him. But there's also a reason they traded him, and he's got some off-ice issues, and I'm not sure how popular he is amongst teammates. Because he had a contract dispute in Colorado, which led, like, he signed in the KHL. So that's what led to him being traded. And he was always sour about not being named captain over Landeskog. And then, the whole Tim Hortons thing happened. But
Right. And then that thing happened.
That thing happened. But I think, in Buffalo, I think he's a logical choice because, there's Jack Eichel and stuff. But the fact that he hasn't already been named captain kind of makes it... it's a new coach, so maybe he's trying to get a feel, but I feel like going into this season, they should just give it to him for better or for worse.
Right.
So,
Just-
or even like Jason Pominville's back. So like, you know, even if you just want like the 1 year guy, he's got a history there. He used to be captain, but
do you want a player who's only going to be captain for a year? Like a player, do you want to name him captain for only a year, only to have to name somebody else the next year?
probably not. If there's a guy that fits the mold that's going to be there long term, like a Ryan O'Reilly. Like I said, that's a very curious move on my for me that they haven't done it already, and it'll be interesting to see. Because Jack Eichel is one of those guys that was really interesting to see how he was going to perform going in this year, and hasn't really caught fire yet. So I think they were waiting to see if they should just give it to him, but maybe he doesn't. That's the distraction he doesn't need, you know.
Maybe.
But that another team that we both follow closely, Toronto Maple Leafs.
Toronto Maple Leafs still without a captain.
Still without a captain.
We have some very we
started talking about it, and I said we need to
stop.
Because-
So Colin, who do you think should be captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, I'm very surprised that you don't agree with me, and I think most of Leafs Nation would agree with me and say number 34, Austin Matthews. And hear me out. Story's shaking her head at me. Hear me out. The guy, I get your hesitation, and I had the same hesitations last year. Obviously, you're not going to name him captain going in on his rookie season. And I was even concerned about giving Connor McDavid getting the C in Edmonton so early. Obviously, that's worked out. But I think because of his demeanor, because Austin Matthews just like never really looks rattled, and he is the guy that brings it every night. Like every game that I've seen in the Leafs play this year, and I mean his stats back it up, he is always on, and he's just your horse. Like he's leading by example out there. He doesn't even need to really say anything. Just I think because he's leading by example and because he's there every night, I don't think it would really cause a distraction for him. Obviously, you'd have to talk to the media more, but he already does that enough, I think. And he's the guy, like you said, like if you really want a captain, are you going to give it to someone who's going to be there for a year or two, or do you want someone going forward? And I was, as far as the young guys go in Toronto, I was always on the Morgan Riley train. But now that Matthews has kind of asserted himself more, I mean, I think Riley's a great assistant captain, but you can give it to Austin and let him run with it.
I completely agree with everything that you said. If we were taught, but
saw a butt coming.
Yeah, I know. Everything that you said is exactly, to me, captain material. Is exactly why Austin Matthews will be captain one day.
One day.
I just don't think he's ready to be captain yet. It's only his second season. You know, we're like...
Why not, though?
I just think that there are players on that team who are, like... It's only Austin Matthews' second season with the team. Yeah. And there's so much young blood on that team that in order to lead by example properly, I think you need someone who's been around the block for a while, and you need to pick one of your veteran guys over Austin Matthews, at least for the next, like, year or two. You know, like, you need to go for a short term. I would pick a veteran guy over Austin for a few more years so that Austin can learn from someone who's been there, who knows what the playoffs, like a full playoff run feels like, who knows, you know, who knows the full ups and downs of a couple of seasons. And I would pick Patty Marleau.
I was going to say, I think there's only one guy in the Leafs that fits that mold.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I would say Patty Marleau, because really at the end of the day, like, how many years... We've talked about this before. Like, how many years does Patty Marleau really have? Like, it's not a super long.
Oh, he was signed for 3 years.
Right. So I mean, he could go elsewhere. So you make him the captain for a couple years. Austin learns under Patty Marleau. They get to the playoffs. They do a couple of, you know, rounds of the playoffs together. Austin learns from Patrick Marleau, who is loved by literally everybody. Nobody is going to get upset about that. You get him to kind of take Austin under his wing, bring him up through the learn how to be a captain ranks, and then in a couple of years, everything that you said about Austin Matthews will just be so good. And then Austin Matthews takes over the C and is the greatest captain
of all time.
of all time.
I think I see where you're coming from, and I think next to Austin, maybe Marlowe's the best choice, but I will play devil's advocate and say he was stripped of the C in San Jose for a reason. And I think it's kind of a distraction that he wouldn't even be interested in because he came to Toronto. I think Patrick Marleau's good in his role on the team. He was like a legend in San Jose, as we saw this week when he went back and they honored him. But I think he wanted to step out of the spotlight. He came to Toronto, but he's on the quote-unquote third line. So he's in a comfortable role. He doesn't have to be the go-to guy, and I think he is suited to that role better at this point in his career rather than facing the media every day, getting asked all the questions, and being looked at for when they need a spark on the ice to kind of lead them and be the heartbeat of the team. So that's my only argument against it. But like I said, I think I see where you're coming from, and I think he's the second best choice, but I'd still give it to Austin.
Right. I just think that it's really hard for a guy who's so young to properly lead a team. Like, I know, like, Connor McDavid,
John Taves.
Yeah, but Connor McDavid, I feel
Gabriel
like
Landeskog, I mean, not the best example, but I'm still a big fan.
But I think Connor McDavid is a bit of an exception because there really was, like, nobody else on that team.
I mean, you could have made a case for a few guys, I'm sure. I can't remember who was even there at that point. But
I think, like, it's like, we're going to just make this choice. It's, you know, and...
yeah. But Austin Matthews is in the Connor
so
McDavid
bad
realm
that,
of
like,
players.
we're going to make Connor McDavid the captain, and it's going to work out for us. And that did. But it just, like, when you have a team that's actually good and a team of really, really great deep players like the Toronto Maple Leafs, I just, you know, this year, no, maybe next year. So if they
That's
go
what I mean.
and then they
They're
hold
not gonna,
off,
yeah.
don't assign a captain, maybe Austin will be. I just don't feel it or see it in the next year. But
that was my next question for you was, do you think, because I don't think anyone's going to get named captain this year for the Leafs, do you think it's hurting them on the ice this year?
I think that they need, yes. Yeah. The easiest way to say that is yes. I think that they're just struggling when it comes down to the teams who aren't doing so great and not as deep, or maybe a little bit kind of working on even younger players and development. The Leafs have kind of no problem because they've got Babs on the bench and they know to listen to him and they play the game he wants them to play. When it comes to them facing on against, like, the Blackhawks, they need someone who's a captain to say, here's how we do this and here's what we need, and like shake, and just to shake them in the locker room to be like, we're the freaking Toronto Maple Leafs, like, let's not let them steamroll us on the ice.
Right. And I think that's a good point because I stayed up late this week and watched most of their West Coast swing, and they're, like, going against experienced
They were
teams.
getting steamrolled.
Yeah, and they were looking worse, like at the worst they have all year.
I've never seen them look as.
And even in the game that they
place.
won against Anaheim wasn't the greatest game from them.
And they almost didn't win that one.
Yeah, and Getzlaf was out.
Yeah,
and that's a big reason.
Yeah.
So you're not like going against guys like Getzlaf, Kopitar, Thornton. You know, you need.
You're not gonna win if you don't have someone on the team who can be that captain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and you're not like, yeah, sweet. You can beat the teams that are worse than you. Great. But you have to beat the teams that are better than you. And you need someone on that team to be your captain to say, this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
Anyway.
So there's a couple more teams that we want to touch on here. Arizona's one. Again, kind of curious why they haven't named a captain, because I think the logical choice there is Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's probably the best defenseman in the league that nobody talks about because he's stuck in Arizona, and they don't get any media coverage. But he is just consistent, and I think it would be a good kind of ploy to give it to him if he wanted it, because his contract's up at the end of next year, so he could walk if he wants to, and I see that as kind of a realistic possibility given the shaky ownership in Arizona, with not wanting to dish out long-term huge money contracts, and because of their lack of success. So he's probably he could be done. Maybe he wants a fresh start somewhere. So I don't really see anyone else kind of fitting that role at this point. They just got Derek Stepan. They've got Nick Jarmelson now. So also good candidates, but they're a young team that I think kind of needs more direction and more stability. And I think we've seen that at the start of this year. Vegas doesn't have a captain. I think that's kind of a
completely understandable.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an obvious thing. But do you have anyone who you think would want to maybe going into next season? Because I've got two main ideas, but one of the guys probably won't be there next year. I'm thinking.
I don't know. Not off the top of my head.
It's kind of a medley of Misfits. Vegas.
It is. It is a little medley of Misfits.
My guy was Derek Englund.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he's obviously the captain doesn't always have to be the best player, as we see.
Yeah.
If I ask you who the captain of the Florida Panthers are, I would give you like $20 if you could name it for me, because I totally forgot and wouldn't have named it.
I honestly couldn't.
Derek McKenzie.
Okay.
You probably
cool.
don't even know who that is.
Great.
Not many people do.
Sorry, Panthers fans.
I'd be like, oh,
We're bad
maybe
Panthers fans. We're
like
not.
Barkov or Ekblad or
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Derek McKenzie is the captain, which I kind of chuckled at when I was looking into this last night. But so Derek Englund's I think a good kind of role player like that, and I don't know if you saw at the beginning of the season with his address to the city and everything.
Yes.
He's Vegas through and through. He grew, played. He's got his family there. His kids were born there. He played ECHL hockey there. So I think he'd be a good ambassador for the team in the city, and he'd be a guy that could have it. I think he'll retire as a Golden Knight myself, but he'll be a guy that'll kind of hold it until some of their young players come in, like Cody Glass is probably a good example. Until someone actually takes the reins. My other guy was James Neal.
Yes. Agreed.
But he could be gone at the deadline.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Well,
all of these, both choices.
Hockey Central, I think, touched on this the other day, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with guys like James Neal and David Perron, because they are in a playoff position right now, and if they continue to play well, if they're in the playoffs, and you got these guys that their contracts are up, do you just say, screw it, we're expansion, we're not going to compete, and trade them, or do you try to compete?
I think they're going to compete, 100%.
But is that a smart decision for the future? You got to think long term.
But I think they're in it to win it, and I've said that from the beginning. There's no part of them that wants to. None of those players don't.
Yeah, players never want to.
No, but even the team, the team came out and there was they've been out to prove themselves since day one, and to kind of make up for all of those kind of flubs in the beginning. But as a team, they're going to do it.
So
they're gonna go for it.
If you do that and maybe you re-sign James Neal, then I think you can name him captain.
Yeah.
But
I think, and I think to the point of going to the playoffs, nobody remembers your second year, but everyone will remember your first. And so, just go for it. Just do it. Just go as crazy as you can year one. If that means that you're going to say goodbye to a whole bunch of really great players and have to basically start from scratch again in year two, who cares? You'll be old news by then. No one will really, you won't be the flashy new Vegas team. You'll just be Vegas, just like every other team.
Yeah,
no one's going to care. So, and if you tank in your second year, everyone will be saying, "Oh, what happened to them last year versus this year?" Okay, fine. But no one will really care about what happened to you or remember what happened to your franchise year 2. They're just going to think about year 1. You made it to the playoffs. You went you did X amount of rounds, and then that's it. And that's what you're going to remember them for. And that whole team will be there to be remembered as the expansion team that went to the playoffs in their first year.
Right. And this is one of those decisions I think that's going to come down. I think ownership's going to make the call more than anything. They're going to say, yes, we want to make the playoffs, we want to compete, or we don't care. So, and I think knowing a little bit about Vegas ownership, I think you're right. I think they might want to compete and want to make the playoffs and get the city excited.
Yeah, because otherwise, how are they going to sell tickets next year?
Exactly.
It's like, great, you sold a bunch of tickets to your games this year. Like, their games have pretty high attendance, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's better than Florida and Arizona.
I mean, like, they have decent attendance, so how are you going to sell tickets for next year? You're going to make it to the playoffs. And then if you tank in year 2, it is what it is. People are still going to buy tickets. Sort of.
There's one more team I want to mention here.
Okay.
They have captain, but they have 2. That's Carolina Hurricanes.
Right.
And do you have any opinion on having 2 captains? Because mine's pretty strong.
I probably have less of an opinion than you do. So, do tell, Colin, why do you not enjoy this?
Well, I mean, they got Justin Falk and they've got Jordan Stahl. And my whole thing is just make a decision, you know? The Carolina Hurricanes are a team that has suffered in mediocrity. They haven't made the playoffs, I think, in 9 years. And they haven't got a top draft pick in that same span. So they've been hovering around the playoffs, but just not making that next step. And they're doing it right now. They've drafted well. They've got a lot of good young players in place, but they need to be more bold. Carolina is baloney. They need to spice it up a bit. They need to be more assertive with their choices on the ice. So that includes a captain, and like I said, maybe making a big trade. They've been involved in the Duchesne rumors since they started, and I think that they need that one big offensive dynamo on their team because that's what they're lacking. So that's what upsets me about the Carolina Hurricanes. But we'll see what they go. And I mean, Justin Falk could be a guy that is traded. So maybe that sorts itself out, and then they just give it to Jordan Stahl. But we'll see.
And there you go. And then they only have one captain, and all is
and
good
then
in the
all
world.
is well.
All is
In
well.
Colin's mind.
Okay, so you wanted to talk a little bit about a blog that you're writing, which if you haven't gone to our website, you should check it out. You can check it out at...
NewHockeyOrder.com.
There you go.
Link will be everywhere.
Yeah.
On our Facebook page.
Facebook, Twitter, website.
Yeah.
Find us. But Colin writes these really incredible blogs and pieces that are full of analytics, knowledge, and how-to. So, Colin, tell us a little bit about what you're writing.
Well, the next one I wanted to focus on, we talking a lot about coaching this week, so I kind of wanted to see the coaches that were in the NHL, how they're doing as far as their own analytics go, and what coaches are available and what their record looks like. And that's not just win-loss, there's a lot to it. I wanted to talk a little bit about some key things about analytics for those who don't know, just because you ask me about this all the time, and I mean, I feel like we should maybe give it some context. So I have a quick short list of 5 things you need to know, and I will expand on these on the blog and on our Facebook page. But first of all, they're a tool. Any business these days uses analytics. You can test this through your social media.
I do. Yes, analytics are key.
So when it comes to hockey or sport analytics or baseball analytics, anything like that, it's all it is a tool. It's the same thing. You don't make decisions purely based on it. I mean, in big business, they're probably more likely to. But I think at the end of the day, it's just a tool. People need to realize that. There's too many people that are involved in the analytics world or that are interested that only look at the numbers and don't look at the context behind the numbers.
Florida.
Yeah. So.
Excuse Excuse me. Sorry,
That-
I had a cough there.
That's what kind of bugs me about things, especially like some friends. They're like, oh well, like, they ask me, oh, these guys' numbers are good or these guys' numbers are bad. Why don't you think they're a bad player? Because there's a lot more to it. There's people involved. There's a human element.
There's
and
a personality,
there's the eye test,
which is my favorite.
and chemistry.
side.
So, it does, and the reason they exist is to try to put everything into a vacuum. So, they try to take out any contributing factors that would cause differences, like quality of competition, quality of the players on your team, where you start, offensive zone starts, defensive zone starts. Those are nothing that a player can control. That's controlled by the GM, by the coach. So they try to eliminate all those factors as much as possible and evaluate players on an even playing field, which isn't easy because there's so many factors involved. So that's one. Luck's a big factor. This is something that Analects has taught us. It's called PDO. I forget what that stands for, but basically, luck is huge, whether people admit it or not, when it comes to hockey. I think more so in hockey than most sports, just because the game moves so fast. And like you see goalies go out to play the puck, blow a tire, there's a goal. That's purely luck. Like there's a divot in the ice, so you have to factor for that. Goaltending still hasn't been figured out in the Analects community. There isn't like a one catch-all statistic for goalies, and goaltending varies so much over year to year. So that's probably one of the most fascinating things for me. There's a few save percentage is still kind of like the one of the most dependable things to use, but you can adjust save percentage as far as adjust the save percentages factoring in shot quality or home plate save percentage. So if you draw like a home plate around the net, like those are high quality chances. So those are more telling than just save percentage on its own. And it just makes sense. If you have, no matter who the goalie is, if you're giving shots up from the slot every game, then they're going to let in goals. There's a few resources which I'll link on the website and on the Facebook page, but a few names to look out for if you guys are interested in learning about analytics are Rob Volman, Ryan Stimson, and Behind the Net and hockeyreference.com. All for many different reasons. We'll talk about it maybe more another day, but we could go and talk about that a lot. And yeah, and like a business, analytics can be applied to any factor of hockey. So there's, like I said, the coaching and evaluating your coaching, but evaluating your players, contract negotiations, trades, everything. GMs can be evaluated as well. So there's just so much to it, and there's so much more to learn. And that's what interests me, is that nothing's really been figured out, and it's not like a science yet, but we're learning. And technology is really helping that. Like soon, there's going to be microchips in the puck, in players' jerseys, and you're going to know where everyone is on the ice at all times, which I think is pretty crazy.
To the future.
To the future.
And beyond.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so watch out for that blog coming up this week. In the next few days, popping up on our website, newhockeyorder.com. You can find out more. You can tweet us. You can follow us. We're on Facebook at the NHO Show. Easy to find
Tweet us, yeah. I'm
Do tweet us.
I've
tweet
I've
back.
kind of given up my personal Twitter, and I'm just like on ours now because
Great.
99.9% of my tweets are hockey related anyway. So
Great, because 99.9% of mine are cat related.
Yeah.
They aren't, but some are.
So if you're watching a game and you want to hear my ranting about it, that's kind of where I just display my thoughts.
Or
So,
you have thoughts on Brizgalov.
yeah, Sabres.
Ask Briz. New favorite thing on TV right now. Forget actual
I
hockey.
saw that the other day for the first time, and I just had to chuckle.
I love how the best questions aren't hockey related
Yeah,
questions.
at
Briz,
all.
what books are you reading right
Yeah.
now? How is your cat?
Yeah.
These are all very important questions.
He's just
in
a funny human.
He's just the greatest. Okay, well, thanks for listening. This was another exciting episode of the New Hockey Order.
The NHO Show.
The NHO Show. I'm Storie with Colin Mills. And check us out. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.